All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the full episode. We've got a bonus content piece for you all today, and Dan just shared with me something I want you all to hear. So, Dan, tell us about your experience with a certain world record roller coaster.
Well, when you first reached out to me about being on the podcast and called Ride of Your Life, I think you mentioned something. You talked about roller coasters.
Yeah.
And when we finished the episode, I said, "Hey, where's the question about the roller coasters?" Um, but the one I was going to mention was the Beast
Mm-hmm.
at Kings Island in Cincinnati, which opened in 1979, and at the time it was the tallest, longest, and fastest wooden roller coaster
Mm-hmm.
in the world. And I rode it the next year, the second year it was open, with my dad, and it was in 1980. And I remember we stood in line over an hour to get on it, and so I'm 13 years old, and my dad, God bless him, he had to have full set of dentures when he was in his early 30s.
Wow.
So we get on that roller coaster, and it is as advertised. You make this long climb, and as you come over the
Mm-hmm.
top, you look down, and there's a little bitty black hole at the bottom, and
Yeah.
about 1.2 seconds, you're inside that thing. It's a tunnel,
Yeah.
and it does the twists and turns and everything, and the only thing that I remember about it is that shook so much, so violently, because it was going so fast that my dad actually had to clasp his hand over his mouth to keep from losing his false teeth, which
Wow.
we laughed about for years. Well, and so then here's the second part of the story. I graduated high school in 1985, and I was 195 pounds and could dunk a basketball. And by the time I got to be in my early 50s, late 40s, I was over 460 pounds. And so I couldn't do anything like that. But on February 4th of 2020, right before the whole world shut down because of COVID, I had gastric bypass surgery,
Hmm.
and I lost 180 pounds. And so my wife and I, in 21, I think it was, it might have been later in 20, but I think it was 21, we went to Kings Island. It had to be 21 because I'd lost all the weight. And I said, I'm going to see if I can get on the Beast. And I did. And
Nice.
so I rode it again, which is still the only other time I've ever ridden it, but it was the first time I'd ridden it since 1980, so it was 40 years between rides,
Yeah.
and it was still as terrifying and fun the second time as it was the first time.
Yes, the Beast it's something. It will beat you up.
It still is. It's amazing. It's one of the best
It
roller
is.
coasters in the world.
Yeah, and the future's looking pretty good for it. I think, based off some rumors, it might be getting a little bit bigger and beating its own record. So we'll see what time has to tell about that.
And so you're going to make me have to consider riding it again.
Yep, with Revenge of the Beast. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Awesome. I want you all to hear that. And what are some other Kings Island memories that you've had?
We started going to the park not too long after it opened in 1972. And how long that's been around. I'm scared of heights. I hate heights, but first time going up in the replica of the Eiffel Tower they have there, and
Yeah.
it's just it was the first time that I had been to someplace so expansive as that. And I'm 57 years old, and I still go back every chance that I get. Don't ride nearly as much. We may take grandkids with us, or take even our adult children sometimes, who still act like they're younger kids. But just really the whole city of Cincinnati is someplace that I've grown. I've been in love with since I was a child, and so we go back there occasionally, and like I say, I may not ride anything, but just walking around and taking in the atmosphere and watching kids interact with their parents and do stuff like that. And I'm telling you, man, it's huge. It's huge, and they've added so many different rides and coasters and updated and everything there. It's worth the trip. It really is.
It is, and I too have grown up at the park. It's my home park, and my wife and I joke about it being our second home because we have the gold pass and we do the meal plan and everything. So we're there a lot. So yeah, when you mentioned that afterwards, I'm like, oh man, I wish we would include that in the original episode. But this is giving people a reason to listen all the way through.
People hang out like the movies when the credits are rolling and the producers stick stuff in there. My wife and I have graduated now to where we're season pass holders at Dollywood, which is about 3 hours where we live. So, we'll ride a few rides, but we ended up watching more shows than we do anything.
All right. So, what's your absolute favorite thing about Dollywood?
Quite honestly, I think the fact that because I've been able to had the surgery and lose the weight, that I can ride some of the rides. The Thunder roller coaster there is another old wooden coaster that absolutely shakes you to death, but it's fantastic. I really enjoy it, but I just love the family atmosphere there, and like I said, we have kind of graduated to where we like to go and enjoy the shows and things along those lines. So, and the other thing about it is, if I can keep her and my daughters in the park, then they're not out spending money in Pigeon Forge or somewhere else, Sevierville or Gatlinburg. So we try to stay in the park. That's expensive enough.
Yes, it is, but it is so worth it at Dollywood, and the food is amazing there. The cinnamon bread can't beat it.
Mm-mm.
And then the entertainment, like you said, is top notch. Probably some of the best theme park entertainment out there.
I think so.
You got the Kingdom Airs, you got the little shows here and there, but yeah, good stuff. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that.
Well, I was just all hyped because you had mentioned that in the very first conversation we had, and I was like, we're just going to talk about the Beast.
But I think what the Lord had us talk about in the main segment today was needed.
Much more important than a roller coaster, for sure.
Yep. We are a ministry that talks about roller coasters, but ultimately we want to make Christ known and let people know there's help from the Lord even in the roller coasters of life. There's hills, valleys, corkscrews, all that stuff, but ultimately God is there with us once we're saved.
You'll get shaken up, but you'll eventually come into the station.
Yeah. Amen.